The modern anime industry is an interesting one. Different eras of anime have different reasons for success. For example, the 70s and 80s were more or less dominated by the mecha genre because big colorful robots that flew into space were literally the coolest thing ever. Gundam and Legend of the Galactic Heroes come to mind here. Then the late 80s to early 90s anime had their big boom when they started properly realizing certain demographics, and long-running shows like Dragon Ball for boys and Sailor Moon for the girls really came into their own, thus allowing them to also grab overseas success and gaining worldwide critical acclaim and fame, and still be in the cultural zeitgeist and casual talks of today's era. The early to late 2000s had two of the biggest reasons in anime's history that anybody can instantly identify: the Big Three and the Moe Blob era. But this era of the 2010s to now is where the big boom happened in terms of anime output volume and cultural relevancy. And I believe that this entire era can be defined by one singular word: tropes. Tropes have become so prevalent in today's anime industry that many of them are immediately identifiable just by the early minutes of the first episode of a show. The 100 Girlfriends Who Really Love You already has two of the biggest examples of such tropes by the end of the first episode, with the girl and the rich horny girl that fantasizes about so much lewd stuff it would feed doujin artists for months. However, in terms of the broader anime spectrum, there's many more tropes out there that are just as identifiable and enjoyable in their own right. I love anime and its many ways that can make a character stand out in its own way in form of tropes that can become either their entire personality or just their purpose of existing. And in this video, I have 5 such tropes that I would like to dive into and explain why I like or love these tropes as much as I do. Will I make this a series? Who knows? But what I will know is if you want to see more content like this, click that subscribe button so I know that this is something that you guys want to watch more of. So with that out of the way, let's get into the video. The first anime trope that I absolutely love is one where a found family is formed. Whether it be through pure coincidence or whether it was a long time in the making, having that found family really puts things well into place that many other real or natural families simply cannot or are unable to do. The most recent and biggest example of this is Spy X Family. When the best spy in the West, Twilight, aka Lloyd Forger, gets a mission to start a family for the sake of preventing the country from starting a war, he manages to very quickly pull everything together in true spy fashion. However, what really makes it endearing is the way that his, yours, and Anya's personality, even when they're almost polar opposites, especially with the fact they're all leading double lives, makes for a dynamic that allows their true feelings to show for one another. What starts as a surface level familial relationship turns into something extremely precious for everyone involved, and it strengthens the bond to near unbreakable levels. There's countless examples like this, like the Straw Hat Pirates or the Konosuba Squad, to name a couple. But the biggest catalyst to how and why these bonds are even able to be formed and strengthened in the first place only comes down to one thing: time. When shows display a certain amount of time that properly displays how well formed and how strong some bonds can become, that's when it's at its best, and it only helps you feel right investing a lot of emotional energy into. I used to think way back in the day that certain anime moves being shouted to the high heavens while having earth-shattering consequences was the coolest thing ever. I still do today, but I just wanted to highlight that I also used to. But recently I discovered something even cooler than that also portrays itself as a trope: not shouting attack names. Really, this more or less is directed at action-adventure or isekai shows at least, but this trope is actually a little underrated because sometimes you don't even catch when it's happening. This trope of not shouting attack names really highlights the show don't tell aspect of some anime. It gives a feeling of letting the power of an attack speak for itself. Take, for example, Attack on Titan. That's the only show where the only names that are shouted are and other human names. If this show shouted attack names every time Eren transformed into a Titan, it wouldn't hold a candle to its current popularity. I don't necessarily roll my eyes in today's era of anime if and when attack names are said, but not doing that sort of provides a unique twist in the vibe that a show displays. There's also a surprise factor in there as well, usually executed for the better. Some attacks just have that ability and that aura to make you audibly say, whoa. Especially when it escalates the stakes tenfold. So moral of the story is, not shouting your attack names gives you as much aura points as cool guys not looking at explosions. When you think of shows that start small in terms of power scaling and gradually get bigger as episodes go on, what's the first anime that comes to mind? And don't you dare say Dragon Ball, that's cheating. Me personally, I think of Gurren Lagann. At the beginning, you are literally starting from within the Earth's crust, and by the end, you are in space, fighting universes with universes against concepts that just seem absolutely unexplainable. Now let me ask you another question. How many shows have you watched that doesn't have massive power scaling and still manages to grip you to the end of it? Because while power scaling itself is a pretty big trope, almost like a genre within itself to a degree, power scaling where it's reasonably small and more contained is where the juicy stuff really is. A couple examples I would like to point out here are Megalobox and My Hero Academia Vigilantes, the My Hero Academia spin-off. One reason why I'm more or less drawn to these kinds of shows is because I can put myself in the shoes of either the protagonist that has manageable powers or a random civilian that witnesses these smaller battles between people with said powers, and I can think to myself, yeah, I can see this happening. In fact, I watch these shows and I think to myself, I can feel this actually comprehensible damage. Not every power move needs to rip the planet apart in half or recreate the Big Bang, but there are moves that have enough power behind them that can make its impact felt the most. Sword Art Online really ruined this next trope for me since it spawned this image. But I absolutely love a well-designed character that doesn't have black hair with bangs. I've always held a belief in terms of iconicness that an anime character's looks can really outweigh most other things if it stands out enough. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is a perfect example of this. Iconic design with legendary hair with a disposition and drive to back up everything great about him, plus his dub voice.
That's right.
That's just buttery smooth shit. The big three of the 2000s also embody this as well. Ichigo from Bleach, Naruto, and Luffy from One Piece all embody this too, and I'm including Luffy specifically because his design with the straw hat actually on his head is the best thing about him and has more screen time than with hat off Luffy. Don't fact check me on that, that's a complete guess by the way, please. I always gravitate myself towards characters that go the extra mile to stand out because they more often than not evoke the more engaging and thought out personality. In fact, I'll take it a step farther. I would rather watch a really bad show that has a character that sticks out in design than I would a mid to even good show that has a character that has no design quirks or personality. And I know it sounds like an extreme nitpick, but this has happened several times within the last couple of seasons that I just couldn't help but get it off my chest. Hey, I'm gonna be real with you for a second here. All of us, we all inevitably get older. That's just life for you. Tastes change. We mature. We even start to eat vegetables voluntarily at one point despite vowing you'd never, ever, ever do so. But with anime? That maturation has come in the form of being so receptive to shows whose main characters are older than high school level. I absolutely love the trope of a college setting or office setting or just shows that have older main characters, like Kowloon generic romance. And while it's not uncommon for high school anime to also have mature or very mature themes, in fact it's probably even more common than most adult anime do, it just hits so much more differently. Watching an older cast of characters go through relatable problems that people in the real world go through as well. So many older main characters just want to escape their day-to-day and have their own methods of doing that, like watching anime, drinking in the streets of Tokyo. You know, like how humans do in the real world. For a long time, anime has always been marketed as children's cartoons, and for a while developed a stigma where it wasn't cool to like stuff like that. But as we grow older, more shows with older main characters are continuing to release, and slowly but surely, an older demographic will be able to understand its appeal. Shows like Kaiju Number 8, My Senpai is Annoying, Cowboy Bebop, and Metalist are all shows that anybody who aren't teenagers anymore can absolutely latch onto, and for good reason. And if anybody gives you shit just because you're a person that's a little older than the major demographic of people who like anime, tell them to stick it where the sun don't shine, or kick them in the balls like how Denji did to Aki in Chainsaw Man. Thank you for watching up to the end of this video. This script was fun to make, and if this gets enough likes, I could potentially turn this into a series down the line in the future. Leave a comment in the comment section and let me know of other tropes you love in anime. I read every comment and respond to most of them, so I'd love to start a discussion. If you like this kind of content, don't forget to subscribe as well, as every single one goes a long way. I have a Twitch channel that I stream multiple times a week, so if you want to stop by and say hi, or if you want to talk anime on there, go follow me on there. I also have other channels which will be down in the description, so go subscribe to all those channels as well. That's gonna be it from me, guys. Stay cool, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.